right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm basically just going to walk through the fitness competition playbook. I actually have a PowerPoint, so let me get that up and running. Can you see that? Can someone say it? Because I actually lost my.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So this is what we'll go over. So we'll go over the competition format, what to expect, how it's going to work, important dates for score collection and practice information, because we'll have some SOE-led practices that I'll talk about a little bit later. We'll talk about the different level options that there are. It's similar to like skills where there's level 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully that helps divide your athletes up into the appropriate level. And then what exercises are part of each of those levels. A few just miscellaneous items I just want to make sure I don't forget. And then of course, open it up for questions. If you have questions throughout, feel free to either enter it into the chat. Nicole and Michaela, maybe you can help me out if something pops in there. Or just feel free to unmute yourself and just holler. We got a small group, so it can be more of a conversation, that's fine. So first things first, we'll get into the competition format. If you have read the playbook already, a lot of this is repetitive from that, a lot of copying and pasting from the playbook, but I'll go over it anyway. So the length of this season will be 10 weeks. It can be done virtually. So the way I consider virtually is kind of what we're doing now on a computer via Zoom or whatever other platform you want to use, where the athletes are in their home doing their own thing. Or it could be done in a practice setting. So maybe you do have the ability to meet in person. This is somewhat based on COVID and what your county is allowed to be in at the time. But if you are able to practice, this could definitely be something done in person in a practice setting. There are 3 different fitness levels. We'll get into each of those specifically, but each of the levels will have 4 exercises. Again, we'll talk about each of those in great detail a little bit later on. The one thing to note though is that each participant, so either the athlete or the unified partner, must compete in the same exercises throughout the entire competition. So there'll be 3 different times where scores are submitted, and I'll get into that also in a little bit. But at each of those times, they're submitting scores for the exact same exercises. Every exercise that we'll show you requires very little space and little to no equipment. I think actually just one of the exercises requires a ball of some type. But otherwise, there's little space, little equipment needed to do everything. I did that intentionally because we are offering this as a virtual option, so folks can do it in their living room or basement or wherever they have space. People can sign up in a variety of different ways. Individually is probably the most common, but you could also sign up as a unified pair, so a unified partner and an athlete together. A traditional pair, so that would be 2 athletes. A unified 4-person team, so that would be 2 partners and 2 athletes. Or a traditional 4-person team, which would be all 4 athletes. I will say that if an athlete signs up in either a pair or a team, we'll automatically include them in the individual category, so they have the ability to double award. I recommend that because, hey, who doesn't want more awards, right? Any questions on that so far? Cool. I'm gonna keep going. I can't see videos right now, so just holler if you have a question. So we'll get into a little bit of the scoring now. We'll talk a little bit more about it later once we actually get into the exercises. But like I said before, they'll be submitting 3 different scores throughout the season. The first score will be the preseason score. So in week 1, you'll be collecting scores on all the different exercises. Midway through the season, and I'll get into the specific dates momentarily. Midway through the season, they'll be submitting another score. We as SOE staff will be calculating the % improvement from that original preseason score. So that's what they're going to be measured on. That will be used to determine the division that they're in. So the division will be, of course, based on the level that they sign up in, but also age, gender, and then, of course, the score that they submit. It will be somewhat dependent on how many people participate and how much we break it down for the divisions. Right now, I think we're looking at around 150 people that are interested in participating. That of course can change once we get started, so we'll see. And then finally, there'll be an end of season score where again, we're going to be calculating the % improvement from that preseason score. And that's what we'll use to determine how they're awarded. Questions on that so far? Couple other things to note about scoring. So agencies or coaches will only be responsible for turning in what I'm calling the raw score. So that would be like number of reps or the amount of time that they're holding a specific exercise. That'll make more sense once we start talking about what those exercises are. We as SOE staff will do all the conversions and all the calculations, so you guys don't have to worry about it. But I do want you guys to know what we're doing so you're not completely blindsided or confused about how people are awarded. So the raw score is going to be converted into points for each exercise. So if they do a certain number of reps, that will equal a certain number of points. If they hold it for a certain amount of time, that will be a certain number of points. And all of those conversion tables are in the playbook if you're curious how that all plays out. From there, the 4-point values from those 4 exercises will be added together for a total score. And then the % improvement will be calculated from that total score. Somewhat confusing, but I swear the playbook lays it all out. There's conversion tables, there's examples. So that's your best place to go. Like I said, we'll be doing all the hard work with the math and everything on our end. You guys just need to submit the reps and times. Any questions on all that before I get into specific dates? Okay. I'm kind of flying through this beginning stuff because I'd like to spend the majority of our time talking about the specific exercises. So if I'm going too fast, just holler and we can talk it out. So like I said, with those 3 scores, these are the specific dates that you'll need to know. So for the preseason score, that'll be due Sunday at midnight on Sunday, February 7th. Those scores are to be collected that week prior. So it's really important that everybody collects scores the same week. This is a little bit different than, let's just say, like the bowling league, where you could collect scores at any point in time. The reason for this is we want to make sure that because we're comparing someone's improvement to someone else's improvement, we want to make sure that the same amount of time is between each of those scores. Because if someone had 5 weeks and someone else had 6 weeks, that's not exactly fair. So we want to make sure that those scores are collected within the same window. So you'll see here, preseason scores to be collected February 1st through 7th, due at midnight of the 7th. Mid-season scores are due 5 weeks later, March 1st through 7th. Made it easy on you, kept the same dates. Due midnight, Sunday the 7th. And then the end of season score, again, another 5 weeks after that would be collected April 5th through the 11th, due midnight of the 11th. This will all be posted online and I'll send out this information afterwards too. So you don't have to write all this down. I kind of alluded to this already, but SOE will be leading some practices. This ideally is an addition to whatever the agency is offering. I know that some agencies might be more comfortable with fitness than others, so we wanted just to make sure that there's another option for athletes in case an agency isn't comfortable leading a practice. Or maybe we are allowing athletes to sign up on their own. They don't have to go through their agency. So this is a way for them to get practices without having the agency leading them. They will be held Tuesdays at 7 p.m. starting the week after that first collection date. So you'll have a week of collection. We'll start our practices the following week. They'll also be Fridays at 10 a.m. We wanted to give kind of 2 options, one in the evening and one during the day. And then our last set of practices will be the week prior to when those end of season scores are due. It's all on the events calendar. It's all laid out there. We also are taking a little break from our practices the week, like it says there, the week of March 1st through 7th, so that agencies can collect those mid-season scores without having to worry about missing one of our practices. Everything is on the SOE website event calendar, including the Zoom information. It's already on there. Anyone is welcome to join, whether they're participating in the fitness competition or not. But if people would like reminder emails, because I know that can be helpful, they can sign up on this form and I'll send out reminder emails each day. Another tool, I guess you'd say, that we have for coaches is this practice plan. So first, I just want to say it's optional. It's definitely not a required tool for you to use, but I know a lot of people are not as comfortable in the fitness world, so we wanted to provide as many resources as we could. So the goal for practices throughout this entire season is not just to do the 4 exercises over and over and over again during the 10 weeks, but more so to provide practices that encourage full body strength, endurance, flexibility, balance, everything. It's all connected. It's all going to help those scores improve. So we created this practice plan to help. And I do want to pull it up quick just to kind of show you. I won't walk through it because it's a little long, but as you'll see, can I get a verbal yes, you can see this?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, cool. The beginning is just some key concepts to go over and also some additional links for more resources. But I do want to just scroll down a little bit. There's some fun theme ideas, keeping your athletes interested and excited about showing up to practices. Definitely optional, but could be a fun way to keep it interesting, keep it fun. We included some fun workout games or options. I won't get into detail on every single one of these, but these are just nice, easy ways. So you don't have to be a fitness instructor to run a practice for the fitness competition. If you've ever been to any of the workouts that I've done this past year, some of these will look very, very familiar to you. A lot of them I've just found, honestly, Googling on the internet, which is a great way to do it. So an alphabet workout, you assign an exercise to each letter of the alphabet. This was just an example I found online. There's tons of other ones, or you can make up your own. Same thing with flipping a coin, heads and tails, and assigning different exercises for the different outcomes. Pretty basic stuff. Some YouTube videos in case you wanted to include things like yoga, or maybe your athletes are interested in dance. One of the things I said in the beginning of this document is to do what your athletes want to do. Exercise in general is more fun and people are more likely to stick to it if it's something that they want to do. So find what works for your athletes and do that. I did create some potential weekly schedules. These, of course, are optional. I tried to come up with a little bit of a variety of how you could do it. Kind of tried to cover all my bases of what athletes might want. So option A, you'll see, is a little bit of everything. So it kind of just goes through literally a little bit of everything of all the fun games in this document. Option B is kind of a little mixing it up, but not too much. So there's a few different options, but then it's repeated. So there's some consistency there. I'm actually going to skip to option D, which is a lot of consistency. So you're doing the same workout, but slightly different each time. So it's a little bit more consistent for some. I know some athletes really prefer consistency. Going back to option C, this is really kind of throwing the fun games out the window and really just focusing on certain exercises. That's always an option. You might have more of a fitness background and you want to do it that way, or maybe you have a fitness instructor as part of your agency. They're more than welcome to lead an exercise. This next page just talks about warm-ups and cool downs. They should be done at every practice. In fact, they should be done at every practice, even if it's not a fitness practice, but just some options there in case you need some ideas. And then the rest of the document really just gets into some examples of lower body exercises, upper body exercises, core, and balance, the 4 main areas that we'll be targeting throughout the competition. These are some of the exercises that you could use if you were doing one of the fun workouts. So if you need ideas for your alphabet, letter A, 10 squats. Letter B, 20 calf raises. whatever you want to do. So those are just some ideas in case you need them. So I'll just scroll down just so you can get an idea. Here's some upper body. And with each of the different exercises, I tried to go in there and give options in case it was either too easy or too hard for some of your athletes, and gave some modifications of what you could do. So hopefully that helps out some of your athletes. Scroll down just to show you the core exercises and a few balance as well. So I won't read through this. You guys can definitely do that on your own, but I just wanted to show you that this is there as a resource for you if you want it. We'll go back to our slideshow. All right. Next up, all right, the levels and exercises. Any questions before I get into those? I guess I should ask. Okay. So here are the different levels. This again is all laid out in the playbook, but I just wanted to go through them a little bit closer. So level 1, I would say, is the lower intensity or easy option. I don't like saying easy, it's not easy, easier option. So a one-legged stance with your eyes open, and we'll get into each of the exercises in just a minute. Curl ups, which is kind of an in-between a crunch and a sit-up. A sit to stand, which is basically sitting in a chair and standing up. And then a Roman hold, which is basically holding your arms out at your sides. Again, we'll get into the details of each of those and how they're scored. Level 2 kicks it up a notch, so it's just a little bit harder. So a single leg stance with your eyes closed. For the core, instead of doing curl ups, we've switched it to plank on the knees. Again, we'll demonstrate all this for you. And then leveling up from the sit to stand is a squat. So basically doing the same movement except without the chair. And then for our upper body, we've moved on to push-ups on the knees. Level 3 kicks it up even higher. So this would be the hardest level or the high intensity option. Ball taps are a balance exercise. So you're balancing on one leg, tapping the ball on the floor. We'll show you what it looks like. Plank on our toes this time. It actually makes it a lot harder. We've moved on from squats to a wall sit. Basically pretending like you're sitting in a chair, leaning up against a wall, but there's no chair. And then push-ups, again, on your toes, which makes it harder. So we'll show you what each of those looks like in just a second. So I'm actually going to pull up the playbook, which is, I believe I've sent it out to everybody, but it will be available on our website if it isn't already. This is what it looks like. The majority of the playbook, I'd say it's about half and half. The first half is everything that we've already gone over in a little bit more detail. And then the second half of the book is the specific exercises. So that's what we're going to look at right now. So just going to skip through here, everything that we've already covered. And like you see, copied and pasted right from the playbook, the different levels. I guess I do want to say how you decide what level is appropriate for your athlete or unified partner. It's a little bit of give and take. So participants should be able to complete each exercise. Some of it might be very challenging, and that's okay. If a participant can max out on any particular exercise, which we'll kind of go over what that looks like, consider moving up to the next level. There might be some exercises they can max out and some they can't even do. It kind of depends where your athlete's strong suits are. Some are better at balance than at strength and vice versa. So it's kind of a give and take to find which level is most appropriate. You don't want them to be able to max out on all of them because then they won't have room for improvement, and that's what they're being scored on. So you want to make sure they have room for improvement. If they're at level 3 and they're maxing out on all of the exercises, 1, I don't think that's going to happen. But 2, there are some tips and tricks to making it even more challenging, and we'll get to that. So scrolling down just a little bit further, we're going to go through each of the exercises. So we're actually going to start with level 1, which is, yes, we're here. a single leg stance, eyes open. So in the playbook, it's actually a really great feature. I'd love to take credit for it, but I can't. Special Olympics North America created this playbook, and they even have videos. So if you click on the watch video here, it's actually going to show you a video of how to do this in a lot more detail. It's kind of what we're doing right now, but you can always refer back to it there. And they're nice and short little clips too, which is nice. So for the single leg stance with your eyes open, participants are going to stand with their arms within arm's reach of something sturdy. I prefer to have either a wall or a chair. We want to make sure safety is our highest priority. So I'm debating whether I want to have my video up or screen share. Maybe I'll have my video up and just talk it through. There we go. I like seeing people. So with the single leg stance, they're going to stand on one leg and their arms are going to be on their hips. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to try to wrap up as much as I can here. So hands are going to be on their hips and they're going to pick whatever leg they prefer. It doesn't matter. I would recommend their dominant leg. So if they kick a ball with their right leg, that's probably the one they should stand on. Then they'll pick up their other leg and bend it. They can rest it. I don't think it matters. But the second they touch the ground with their other leg or their hands come off their hips, that's when the time stops. So this one's going to be a timed exercise. I have the playbook here printed out as well. But time starts when the participant is in the correct position. And then time stops when either of those two things happen. So when the arms come off the hips or when that non-supporting leg touches the ground. We talked about maxing out. So maxing out on this particular exercise would be if the person exceeds 55 seconds, which I will say is a lot. But if they max out, then they could either max out or you could consider moving up to the next level. And I just see a question in the chat, so I'm going to take a look at that. One leg stance, does it matter if athlete bends knee up in front of the body, like stepping on a step, or bends knee to back like a butt kick? Or should foot rest on the other leg? That's a great question. I'm guessing, I'm just going to double check the playbook. I would have the foot, it just says off the ground. The video and the picture have it resting on the other leg, which would be my preference, but I'm going to say it doesn't matter. It's not listed in the playbook. I think it would have to be more than just like an inch off the ground, though. I would try to have it up in the air. Does that answer your question? I'm going to go through all the level 1 exercises and then we'll jump to level 2. So level 1 core. I'm actually going to call on Nicole to help me with this one. So if you didn't notice from my single leg stance, I am pregnant and shouldn't be doing some of these exercises. So I'm going to have Nicole be my demonstrator for some. So for the core exercise in level 1 is a curl up. So to get in the curl up position, you would be lying on your back with your knees bent.
I'm going to regret saying this, but would you like to spotlight me so that for the recording it's on the screen?
You bet I would. Good call. Okay, so you'll be lying on your back with your knees bent in front of you, and your hands are going to rest on your thighs. Yep. She's getting ready to demonstrate what not to do. So to do the curl up in the proper form, it's lifting your shoulders off the ground. So you don't have to go, yep, that's perfect, and then back down. So it's more than just the head. So Nicole, just do it wrong, just do your head. Yeah, so that's not a full curl up. We want to get our shoulder blades off the ground. But we also don't need to go all the way up like a sit up, right? So that's too much. So it's kind of like in between a crunch and a sit up. If you're looking at the playbook, some of the things that would count as a wrong curl up would be as if you're using your arms to kind of get momentum like that. So we don't want to use our arms. We want to have our arms on our thighs. We also want to make sure our feet stay planted on the floor. So a lot of athletes will be tempted to lift up their feet to get their core activated. That would not count. So we would just want to count the ones that are a good clean curl up. Thanks, Nicole. You can keep going if you want. I'm going to remove. Awesome. So the participant's going to do as many curl ups as they can to a certain beat. So this is actually a little tricky, but it's not as tricky as it sounds. So they recommend a metronome app on your phone. I've actually just gone to YouTube and searched metronome of the certain speed that they want. And there's always, I can always find a video on YouTube. So I usually pull up YouTube on my phone just so it's easy and nearby. But you can pull it up. It's gonna just kind of like tick tock to a certain beat. And that's the up, down of the curl up. Just making sure athletes stay on that beat. And you're gonna count the total number of curl ups completed in a minute. I'm just double checking to make sure I said that right. I lied. It's not a minute. It's just how many they can do to exhaustion. I knew I wanted to check that because I was like, oh, that doesn't sound right. So it's repeated 1 for every beat of the metronome, which is 40 beats per minute, until they can't anymore. So again, there's a video if you want to watch them give examples. I just changed my view there. Okay, there's a video in the playbook if you want to watch examples, and it gets into more detail on how to do that. Any questions? I guess I should have asked on the single leg stance as well. Any questions on either of those 2 exercises so far? No. Cool. The next one is our sit to stand. So I kind of described this already, but I'm going to demonstrate it for you. So you'll need a chair for this one. So this is one of the exercises that actually requires some equipment, but hopefully because it's a chair, most people have a chair in their house. So I would recommend something that's sturdy. I guess I have a folding chair, which you could argue is not sturdy, but it's sturdier than, let's just say, an office chair that's going to roll away from me. So you want something that's sedentary, it's not going to move on you. And ideally something that's not super soft like a couch that you have to sink into and get back out of. That's just going to make it easier for the athletes. So athletes are going to start seated in a chair, and their hands are going to be across their chest. So the idea is to actually use your legs to get you up and not your arms. They're going to stand up to a fully standing position and then sit back down without using their arms. So that's considered 1, and participants will continue to do that for 30 seconds to see how many they can get. So it's at their own speed, so it's a little different than the last exercise. They're doing it for a certain amount of time to see how many reps they can get. So I'll demonstrate a little bit here. So what I mean by arms are in front of our chest like this. So we're using our legs to stand and sit, stand and sit. So I'm not using my arms to get up. I'm definitely not pushing on my legs to get up. I'm using my leg muscles to stand. Any questions with that? And then lastly, which is probably the one that most people are unfamiliar with, they call a Roman hold, which is basically just standing with your arms out at your sides. You're not holding any weights. It's just holding your arms out. Sounds really easy, but trust me, after a while, you'll start to feel the burn in your shoulders. This is just a great option for that lower level athlete, that lower intensity level, I should say, because if they can only do 5 seconds, great, 5 seconds. If they can hold it for the max out, which is 55 seconds, more power to them. It's just a great option where the next level up is a push-up, and that just might be too advanced for some folks. So there's not much more to it other than just holding your arms out at your sides. Any questions about that one? All right, awesome. I will say, while I'm describing how they will be scored when you're actually collecting scores to be submitted. But if you wanted to make them challenging throughout your practices, you could say, hey, try holding it with weights. If you can do it for 10 seconds with weights, I bet you can do it for 20 seconds without weights. So that's just a good way to make it more challenging during the practice, as long as you're just doing it the right way for the scoring. So on to level 2, we'll go back to our balance exercise first. So level 2, if you remember from level 1, it was a single leg stance with our eyes open. Level 2 is the exact same thing with our eyes closed. This is definitely where I would recommend having a sturdy object nearby, a wall, a chair, something nearby. If you've ever tried to stand on one leg with your eyes closed, it's pretty tough. So making sure our athletes are as safe as possible while doing it is best. Otherwise, the exact same procedure is followed as the single leg with your eyes open. Moving on then to the core. So for this one, and this is going to look familiar from the level 2 and the level 3, they're very similar, but it's going to be a plank. So I'm actually going to spotlight Nicole. So Nicole's going to demonstrate this for me. Thank you, Nicole. So for level 2, we're doing it on our knees. So we'll be on our hands. I know sometimes you see plank on your forearms, but we're going to be on our hands, and our knees are going to be on the ground. So Nicole's demonstrating a good position where her head, shoulders, hips, and knees are all in a straight line. That is what we want. And once they are in position, you'll start timing them. And then the max score is 55 seconds. Once they either give up, that might be an option, or if they lose form. So Nicole, can you demonstrate like saggy hips? Yeah, so this is not what we want. One, it's honestly going to be a little painful on your lower back, so we don't want them in that position. But that also is not activating our core. Another way they could lose form is if they come into more what I call like a tabletop position, or they make like an A with their butts up in the air. Basically, whenever they lose that straight line is when you'd stop the clock. Any questions on the plank? Awesome. Switch the spotlight back to me. Going to our lower body now. So we demonstrated the sit to stand with the chair. For level 2, it's pretty much the exact same movement, just without the chair. So it's a squat. So the biggest thing about the squat is we want to make sure our hips are getting low enough for it to count as a full squat. So stand up. I'm going to show you my profile. You can see my bum. But we're going to pretend like we're sitting in the chair, but we're not going to actually sit in it. So we're bending down. We want to make sure we have a nice crease in our hips, almost 90 degrees, and standing back up. You don't need to hold it like I did. I was just talking. But we're going to get down and back up. Going like this isn't really a squat. We also don't want to make sure our knees go too far forward. That actually kind of hurts. So we want to make sure we're sitting back as if there's a chair, but there's no chair. And we're standing back up. Similar to the sit to stand, you'll count how many times they do the squat for 30 seconds. Once 30 seconds is up, stop counting. That's it. You shouldn't count if they have one bad form. You can just skip that rep. So let's just say I'm going 1, 2, don't count that, 3, 4. So it's however many they do in the 30 seconds. So just don't count the bad ones, only count the good ones. Does that make sense? Seeing some head nods, okay. Next up, plank push-ups. Going back to Nicole. So Nicole's actually going to get in the exact same position as she was in for the plank, but this time we're bending our elbows to do a push-up. So I'm going to quote the playbook here. So participants must bend their elbows at least 90 degrees before returning to the starting position. They recommend a towel or a block under the chest that can help participants to know how far down that they've gone. Sometimes it's hard to tell without looking at yourself how far down you go. So if you wanted to put a pillow or a towel down, that might be helpful. Oh, good idea, Nicole. Ooh, that's really gonna make you low, nice. And then exact same thing as the plank, if they get out of position, don't count those. You're gonna be counting the total number of push-ups in 60 seconds. And they must maintain form in order for the push-up to count. So if they have one, just like the squat, if they have one bad form in there, that's okay, just don't count it, only count the good ones. So yeah, if they're only going down with their head, or maybe their arms aren't actually bending, don't count those, only count the good ones. Questions there? Awesome. Level 3 is actually going to be pretty easy to go through because 2 of the exercises are basically the same thing, just on your toes. So the one that is different is the balance. So it is a ball tap. I'm going to give it a go. We'll see how it goes. So let me switch it back. There we go. So you can use any ball. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it says. I'd recommend something the size of a soccer ball. If you have a volleyball, basketball, football, I mean, I don't think it really matters. I wouldn't get like a giant big ball like the one behind me, because the whole point is to bend down to the ground with your ball. But I just have this like random bouncy exercise ball thing, so I'm going to use that. But you're going to stand with your feet together. And it's similar to a single leg stance in that you're going to be on one leg, but you're going to bend forward. So I will demonstrate. It doesn't matter which leg you go with. You can alternate legs, or you can stay on the same leg. Staying on the same leg is probably more challenging because that leg's going to get tired, but it doesn't matter. The number of reps is what matters. So you're going to be standing on one leg, holding the ball, and you're going to tap the ground and come all the way back up and tap the ground. So as you can see, I'm like losing my balance, and that's fine. You can reset. You can tap your other foot on the ground. You can even switch it if you want. Ooh, I'm not as good on my left as I am on my right. So I could switch it every time, or I could stay on one leg at a time. Whatever works for you. But you're coming all the way back up, counting however many reps you can do in a minute. I just wanted to double check. Any questions with that one? I, in fact, recommend that one even if you are in level 2 or even level 1 for that matter, and the single leg stance is becoming easy. The ball tap might be a good exercise to practice on to improve your balance, even though you'll still be scoring in the same level as you started with, but it's just a good alternative option to mix it up. Next up, I'm going to go back to Nicole because it's going to be slightly different. Will be the plank on our toes. So it's going to look very, very similar to the plank on our knees, except this time our straight line goes from our head, shoulders, hips, knees, and toes. So it goes all the way down to your toes. Nicole's in a perfect position. You'd start timing. And again, as soon as her butt starts sagging, you'd stop time, or as soon as it goes up into an A, you'd stop time. So you'd want to keep that straight line as long as possible. Questions there? While we're on Nicole, I'm just going to skip over the wall sit for a second and just do the push-ups. So exact same position, but this time we're bending our arms and doing a push-up. So same level change in our elbows, that 90-degree angle. This time we're just on our toes, which makes it a little bit harder. Questions with either of those? Thanks, Nicole. And then lastly, for level 3 is the wall sit. So as you can see, a lot of these levels have a nice progression. So we went from our sit to stand using the chair to a squat where you're not using the chair. And then I'm going to use my freezer over here for my wall. And we're going to do a wall sit. So a wall sit is basically pretending like we're sitting in a chair, but we're really just leaning up against the wall. So our feet are going to be a little bit out from the bottom. And we're going to be at this 90-degree angle in our knees. And you're going to hold it. I should double check where our arms go, because I don't remember off the top of my head. See, even I have to look things up. Hold arms at sides or across the chest. So if your athletes are tempted, and trust me, I am, to put my arms on my thighs like that, you want them either at their sides, or if they're tempted to do that, I recommend keeping them at their chest. Kind of takes away the temptation to put them on your thighs. So I'd keep them here, makes it a little bit easier. And you're basically just timing them until they either, maybe they start dropping low, low, low. I shouldn't do this because I'm not gonna be able to get back up. Or maybe they start getting higher and higher until they're not really doing it anymore. So time it as long as they're in that 90 position, 90-degree angle. Any questions with the wall sit?
We did have a question in the chat about mixing levels for taking scores.
So no, once you're in a level, stay in the level. Otherwise, there's no easy way to see how much they've improved. So ideally, you're starting at a level that you're able to accomplish, but not, oh, I'm out of breath. That you're able to accomplish, but it's still challenging enough that you have room to improve. So that way, let's just say I only did 3 push-ups on my knees. I'm in level 2, only did 3 push-ups on my knees in the preseason. Maybe you set a goal then for your mid-season score, I'm gonna try to get 5. And then by the end of the season, hopefully you have a few more after that too. Yes, you might be able to do a push-up on your toe by then, but then you're kind of comparing apples and oranges and not apples to apples, if that makes sense. If participants are on a team, do they each have to do the same level, or can they each be on a different level as long as they stay on that level throughout the 10 weeks? They can be on different levels. So yes, but they would have to, you're correct in that they would have to stay on that level throughout the whole time. So if I'm a unified partner for my athlete, Joe could be in level 1, I could be in level 2, vice versa, either way. As long as I'm in level 2 the entire time and Joe's in his level the entire time. Good question. Any other questions? Me being out of breath just reminds me, make sure your athletes have water throughout the practice. It's always a good idea. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Any other questions with the exercises before I go back to the PowerPoint? Okay. I will share my screen. Done with that. Just a few kind of score collection tips. I mentioned it a few times, but do make sure your athletes warm up first. It seems a little bit more obvious on just a regular practice day, but it should also be done on the score collection days. I I don't know about you, but I just did a few of those and I kind of wish I would have warmed up my legs a little bit first before I sat on that wall. So it's always a good idea to do a warm up first. And of course, then a cool down is important too. I do recommend when you are actually collecting the score to do it one participant at a time. It just helps to make sure that the score is accurate. If you're counting push-ups for 5 different people, you're likely going to miss a push-up. So I recommend doing them one at a time. And then also by doing that, it gives your athletes rest time in between the exercises. So if I'm doing Joe's push-ups and then Susie's, while Susie's doing hers, Joe's getting some rest. So it's just a nice way to build in some rest during those collection times. Something that's optional, but I would say is highly encouraged, is to videotape the scores that you're doing and submit them with each person's scores during registration time. The reason I say this is, one, maybe you're not sure if your score is accurate. Like, gosh, I wrote down 15 push-ups, but I don't know if half of them should have counted. Well, I can help you out. We can check the tape. Also, a fun thing for us is we really want to put together some sort of video montage at the end of the season, and having videos of our athletes doing these exercises would be a great way to highlight our athletes' work. So kind of a double whammy there. Practice each exercise first. So you don't want your athletes, especially in the beginning, that first preseason score, you don't want your athletes going into these cold. You want them to be comfortable with it, with the form, know what's expected of them. You know, are they trying to do it quickly? Are they trying to hit the certain form? Making sure that they're comfortable with each of the exercises before you get started so they know what to expect. I will say, especially if you have a large group, asking help from other coaches, volunteers, or maybe, especially if it's virtual, the parents or caregivers that might be actually on site with athletes, asking them for help, especially with a large group, it can be a lot to collect these scores. So don't be shy in asking your other fellow coaches for help. On that same vein, if you do have a large group, I would highly recommend scheduling multiple score collection practices. So rather than collecting 10 athlete scores, each of them has 4 exercises, that's 40 scores. I'd maybe at least split it in half. So you're only doing 5 athletes at a time. Something like that. Kind of depends on the help you have and if you're in person or if you're doing it virtually. If you are virtual, as you saw me do a few times, making sure that athletes adjust their camera so that you can see the full exercise. When we were watching Nicole, we were able to see from her head to her toe how she was holding that plank and those push-ups. It's really helpful because if you can only see their head bob up and down on the push-ups, you have no idea if they're doing it correctly or not. Not only do we want the exercise to be done correctly so that everything is fair, but we also want our athletes to be safe. That's first and foremost. We want to just make sure that they're doing it with proper form. Any questions with that before I hit a few other miscellaneous items?
So there's a question in the chat about scoring. So if they do more than one practice on the level they are on in the week, do we need to send in all scores for that week, or can we take an average and only send in one set of scores? But so for the scores, they're just doing those 3 times throughout the season, and that's like a specified score collection practice, so to speak.
Right. So I would just collect one set of preseason scores to submit during that week time frame. So if you are going to have 2 practices a week or 2 times where you're getting together, I would devote one of them for being score collection and one just being a regular practice. I wouldn't collect them twice. I think that's what you're asking. Feel free to unmute if you want to clarify, but I think that's the question. Just a few other notes, and then we will open it up to questions again at the end. So Some people have asked me throughout the past few weeks, can athletes participate in the fitness competition as well as other sports? Yes, yes, they can. In fact, I highly encourage it. Fitness competition is going to help them in their other sports. If they're doing fitness workouts and practices, it's only going to help them in basketball skills or whatever else they might be doing. So yes, they can definitely do this alongside other sports. You might be wondering what the registration forms look like. They're coming soon. I was actually looking at them today. We still have some kinks to figure out in our database on what all that calculations and things and what can be collected. So we're working on it. It will be coming soon. It'll be up on our website, and then I'll also send an email out to the same group, so you'll get it directly. This is an optional thing, but I thought I'd throw it out there. So we do have a Fitness at Home Facebook group. If you're not already a part of it, I try to post daily different tips and tricks. Some of them are physical activity, some of them are nutrition, hydration, self-care, motivation. I try to cover it all. It's just a great way to stay connected with other fellow athletes. I post every day, or at least I try to, but I actually really love it when other people post too on what they're doing. It helps keep me motivated. So just another thing to kind of keep an eye out. Everyone's welcome, coaches, athletes, parents, whoever. Some other resources I just wanted to point out. So on our website, I put the link here, but on the health drop-down tab, there is a option called Fitness Resources. It's a great place to go. It has what we call, and I actually have some here, the hard copies, the Fit 5 guide. So this guide talks about exercise, but it also talks about nutrition and hydration, which, yeah, it's not part of the fitness competition per se, as far as scores go, but it goes hand in hand with physical activity. Great fitness, great hydration, or great nutrition and great hydration are going to help your physical fitness too. So this is just a great resource to look at. It's meant for athletes, but it's a great way for coaches to start that conversation with athletes. On a similar note, the Fit 5 guide has fitness cards. Melinda will be the first to say that Jennifer loves her fitness cards and videos that go along with them. Try not to get too confused. They have different levels of the fitness cards. They don't necessarily correlate to our levels of the fitness competition, but there are just different exercises that you can do. So they break it down into endurance, strength, flexibility, and balance. There's 5 different levels, easy to hard. They're just, again, another great resource for you guys to use either as part of your practices or just a place to steer athletes for something that they can do at home on their own. On that same fitness resource page are a few other links, one to a program called School of Strength. I actually haven't done a specific workout myself from this, but I have looked at the videos. If anybody is a WWE fan, some WWE superstars are paired up with Special Olympic athletes leading you through a workout, which is really cool. It's really fun. So another option that you could do either as your practice, you could stream it, screen share your video, or maybe it's something you want to share with your athletes that they can do on their own. And then just lastly, there's a fitness bingo card. This won't necessarily be a practice option, but it could be a fun way to get your athletes doing things outside of practice. So they're all located on our website, but I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of them. Here's my information. You have it because I emailed you already, but if you do have any questions that you think of even after tonight, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call and we can chat about it. I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see all your faces again. Oh, thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. Any questions? Any other questions? That actually was perfect timing. I wasn't sure how long this would all take, so we do have a few minutes if anyone has additional questions. If not, you are obviously free to leave. I'll hang on just for a few more minutes in case you think of something, but thank you so much for joining me. I know it was kind of a lot of me talking, a lot of you guys listening. I appreciate it, but hopefully it was helpful. hopefully kind of clarified some things for you and your group.
Brittany, the stuff that you said at the beginning, like the different kinds of games and stuff like that, is that just for practices then?
Yes, so those are all optional, but yes, those could be done at a practice in case. You're welcome to do your own thing if you have other ideas, but we just wanted to make sure. I know fitness isn't everyone's cup of tea, so we wanted to make sure people had options if they were kind of lost at what to do. So yeah, those are practice options.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Jennifer.
Championship game this Sunday.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited.
They win this one and we go Super Bowl.
All right, I'm gonna just stop recording because I think we're good.